Russian President Vladimir Putin is warning that wokeness is destroying the West. In this video, we're going to take a look at that warning. We're going to see how wokeness really is nothing more than rehashed Marxism. And stick with me to the very end of this video where we'll find what Putin really thinks about all things woke. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you as always. Before we dive into things here, don't forget you only have hours left to take advantage of our huge 80% discount for our new conservative Patriot Live event coming up. That super discount ends tonight, Friday at midnight, so don't wait. Click on that link below right now and register for our new conservative Patriot virtual event. It's on November 12th and 13th, where I and several special guests will teach you to help build a society completely free from all things woke and to experience once again the nation that we know and love. It's a virtual event, so of course you do not have to leave the comfort of your own couch. You can eat potato chips all day long if you like, but you're going to love to learn how to become part of a parallel structure in businesses so we can be free from all things woke. So do not wait. The super awesome 80% discount registration is about to end in mere hours. Click on that link below right now, and I'll see you online for an absolutely awesome weekend. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. Russian President Vladimir Putin recently addressed the 18th annual Valdai International Discussion Club in Sochi, Russia, speaking on the topic of the global shakeup in the 21st century. And here is what Putin had to say about the state of Western society.
We see with bemusement the processes unfolding in countries that have grown accustomed to viewing themselves as the flagships of progress. Of course, it's none of our business what is happening. The social and cultural shocks that are happening in some countries, in the Western countries, some believe that aggressive blotting out of whole pages of your own history, the affirmative action in the interest of minorities, and the requirement to renounce the traditional interpretation of such basic values as mother, father, family, and the distinction between sexes are a milestone towards a renewal of society. It's their right. They can do that if they want to. We're not trying to meddle into that, but we have a different point of view. We believe, at least the overwhelming majority of Russian society, that should be more precise, believe that we need to rely on our own spiritual values, on our historical traditions, on the culture of our multi-ethnic nation.
All right, so Putin is saying here that he and his fellow Russians, and obviously other nations around the world, are watching with bemusement. I love how he used that word. We're watching with bemusement over the paralysis unfolding in countries that have grown accustomed to viewing themselves as the flagships of progress. Did you catch that great phrase? So awesome. Societies like the United States that see themselves as flagships of progress are in paralysis. We're paralyzed. We're not progressing. That's a great line to use. And what is this paralysis? Well, this paralysis is the radical partisanization of our society that comes from the aggressive blotting out of whole pages of our own history, the affirmative action in the interest of minorities, and the requirement to renounce the traditional interpretation of such basic values as mother, father, family, and the distinction between sexes, which are all treated as milestones for the renewal of society. This is the heart of the Russian conservative critique of Western globalism. Western globalism de-traditionalizes societies and thereby destroys traditional cultures and customs. You probably heard about the Thomas Jefferson statue that's being moved out of New York's city council chamber because it's too offensive, given that Jefferson owned slaves. I mean, that's exactly what council members are saying. Jefferson was a white supremacist, and therefore his statue needs to be removed. I wonder what they think of that document he wrote called the Declaration of Independence. Well, we all know what they think of it. See, this is precisely why Russia rejects Western globalism. Western globalism entails the dynamic known as detraditionalization that destroys cultures and replaces those cultures with its own form of imperialism, which is technically called emancipatory politics. We'll get into that in a bit. And he notes that it's none of Russia's business what West what the West wants to do with itself. He says in Russia, we want absolutely nothing to do with it. That's all. We want nothing to do with your wokeification. Instead, we in Russia are enthusiastically embracing our traditional values in the midst of globalism's wokeness. And this is a key difference between conservatives in Russia and conservatives here in the United States, in that conservatives in Russia and the United States are finding themselves on fundamentally different battlefields. So while conservatives in the United States find ourselves more or less in the midst of a civil war, Russian conservatives like Putin see themselves as fighting a foreign invasion, fighting foreign values that are trying to be imposed upon the world by Western ideological elites.
The recipes they come up with are nothing new. Paradoxical as it may seem, but this is something we saw in Russia. It happened in our country before. After the 1917 revolution, the Bolsheviks followed the dogmas of Marx and Engels, and they also declared that they were going to change the traditional lifestyle, the political, the economic lifestyle, as well as the very notion of morality, the basic principles for a healthy society. They were trying to destroy age and century-long values, revisiting the relationship between people. They were encouraging, informing on one's own beloved and families. It was hailed as the march of progress, and it was very popular across the world, and it was supported by many, as we see it is happening right now.
Well, he went there. He went there. You just heard Russian President Vladimir Putin call out Western wokeness for what it really is. It's Marxism. Pure and simple. Our political, corporate, media, and Hollywood elites, all who control the levers of cultural power, are, according to Vladimir Putin, bona fide Marxists. They are fundamentally no different from the Bolsheviks, who wreaked such havoc on Orthodox Russia in 1917. And we have to remember, what is at the heart of Marxism? Marxists essentially believe that all disparities are discriminations. All disparities in society, whether they're economic inequities, professional inequities, educational inequities, it doesn't matter. All inequity, all disparity is by definition the result of some kind of intentional discrimination. Social conditions were set up by certain people who have the power to set up the conditions of society, and those people set up conditions that benefit some at the expense of others. That's Marxism. And then what Marxists do is they supposedly awaken the masses to all the ways in which society systemically advantages some and oppresses others. That's what Marxist wokeness is all about. And Putin's saying, for us in Russia, that's nothing new. We saw precisely these same kinds of people back in 1917, and they wreaked utter murderous havoc in our nation that we're still recovering from 30 years after its merciful implosion.
Incidentally, the Bolsheviks were absolutely intolerant of other opinions, differing from their own. And I think this should remind you of something that is happening. And we see what is happening in the Western countries. It is with puzzlement that we see the practices Russia used to have and that we left behind in distant past. The fight for equality and against discrimination turns into an aggressive dogmatism on the brink of absurdity when great authors of the past, such as fake Shakespeare, are no longer taught in schools and universities because they are announced as backward classics that did not understand the importance of gender or race. In Hollywood, there are leaflets reminding what you should do in the cinema, in the films, how many personalities and actors you've got, what kind of color, what sex, and sometimes it's even tighter and stricter than what the Department of Propaganda of the Soviet Communist Party Central Committee did. And the fight against racism, which is a lofty goal, turns into new culture, cancel culture, and into reverse discrimination, racism on the obverse. And it brings people apart, whereas the true fighters for civic rights, they were trying to eliminate those differences. I asked my colleagues to fight this quote from Martin Luther King, and he said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." That is a true value.
I'm so glad we've got CNN here to tell us what an evil man Vladimir Putin is. I mean, aren't you so thankful for our mainstream media right about now? Putin nails, in a precise way, how globalism eradicates culture and replaces it. Globalism replaces traditional culture with cancel culture. And we have to remember that cancel culture works in 2 directions. One, it obviously cancels. It eradicates and erases, as we're seeing with the Thomas Jefferson statue in New York. It eradicates and erases. But it also imposes something called resentment politics upon society, where an entire segment of the population is redefined, and this is key, as a permanent adversary. Putin just calls this reverse discrimination. And we saw it right after the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban, when the late-night clown and borderline illiterate Stephen Colbert asked rhetorically, why do we have to fight Taliban 10,000 miles away when we've got him right here in our backyard, referring to the January 6th protesters? You see, leftists don't want to fight never-ending wars overseas precisely because they want to fight those wars, those never-ending wars, here at home. This is resentment politics, and it's an inherent part of Marxist society.
You know, the Bolsheviks were speaking about nationalizing not just the property, but also women. The proponents of new approaches go so far as they want to eliminate the whole notions of men and women. And those who dare say that men and women exist, and this is a biological fact, they are all but banished. Parent number 1, parent number 2, or the parent that has given birth, or instead of breast milk you say human milk. And you say all of that so that people who are not sure of their sex or gender are not unhappy. And I would like to say that this is not something new. In the 1920s, the Soviet Kulturträger came up with the so-called newspeak, and they thought that thereby they were building a new consciousness and coming up with new values. And they went so far that we feel the consequences up until now. There are some monstrous things when, from a very young age, you teach to children that a boy can easily become a girl, and you impose on them this selection, this choice. You push the parents aside and make the child take these decisions that can destroy their lives. And if we call the spade a spade, this is nigh to a crime against humanity, and all of that under the banner of progress. Well, some people just want to do that.
A crime against humanity. That is what wokeism ultimately is, according to Vladimir Putin. It is a crime against humanity. And like the Bolshevik Revolution in the past, it is guaranteed to eventually, finally, and mercifully fail. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video on Vladimir Putin and Russia threatening to ban YouTube. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.